my name is Kris Clark, and I have the pleasure of reading for you today. I'm going to be reading out of the book called Travels in West Africa. This is a book written by Kingsley, and it was first published in 1897. The chapter I'm going to be reading from is called A Hippo Banquet, and it's a rather long chapter, so I'm going to do it in parts. This is part 1 of A Hippo Banquet. Tuesday, July 23rd. Am roused by violent knocking at the door in the early gray dawn, so violent that 2 large centipedes and a scorpion drop onto the bed. They've evidently been tucked away among the folds of the bar all night. Well, when ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise, particularly along here. I get up without delay and find myself quite well. The cat has thrown a basin of water neatly over into my bag during her nocturnal hunts, and when my tea comes, I am informed a man done die in the night, which explains the firing of guns I heard. I inquire what he has died of, and am told he just struck luck and then he die. His widows are having their faces painted white by sympathetic lady friends and are attired in their oldest, dirtiest clothes, but very few of them. Still, they seem to be taking things in a resigned spirit. These Ajamba seem pleasant folk. They play with their pretty brown children in a taking way. Last night I noticed some men and women playing a game new to me, which consisted in throwing a hoop at each other. The point was to get the hoop to fall over your adversary's head. It is a cheerful game. Quantities of the common house fly about, and during the early part of the morning it rains in a gentle kind of way, but soon after we are afloat in our canoe, it turns into a soft white mist. We paddle still westwards down the broad, quiet waters of the Oremba Vonga. I notice great quantities of birds about here, great hornbills, vividly colored kingfishers, and for the first time, the great vulture I have often heard of, and the skin of which I will take home before I mention even its approximate spread of wing. There are also noble white cranes and a flock of small black and white birds new to me, with heavy, razor-shaped bills, reminding one of the Devonian puffin. The hornbill is perhaps the most striking in appearance. It is the size of a small or, say, good-sized hen turkey. Grayshirt says the flocks, which are of 8 or 10, always have the same quantity of cocks and hens, and that they live together white man fashion, i.e. each couple keeping together. They certainly do a great deal of courting, the cock filling out the wattles in his neck like a turkey and spreading out his tail with great pomp and ceremony, but very awkwardly. To see hornbills in a bare sandbank is a solemn sight, but when they are dodging about in the hippo grass, they sink ceremony and roll and waddle, looking, my man says, for snakes and the little sandfish which are close in under the bank. And their killing way of dropping their jaws, I should say opening their bills, when they are alarmed is comic. I think this is something to do with their hearing, for I often saw 2 or 3 of them in a line on a long branch, standing, stretching up to their full height, their great eyes wide open, and all with their great beaks open, evidently listening for something. Their cry is most peculiar and can only be mistaken for a native horn, and although there seems little variety in it to my ear, there must be more to theirs, for they will carry on long confabulations with each other across the river, and I believe sit up half the night and talk scandal. There were plenty of plantain eaters here, but although their screech was as appalling as I have ever heard in Angola, they were not regarded, by the Ajamba at any rate, as being birds of evil omen as they are in Angola. Still, by no means all the birds here only screech and squawk. Several of them have very lovely notes. There is one who always gives a series of infinitely beautiful, soft, rich-toned whistles just before the first light of dawn shows in the sky, and one at least who has a prolonged and very lovely song. This bird, I was told in Gabon, is called Telephonus erythroprotus. I expect an ornithologist would enjoy himself here, but I cannot and will not collect birds. I hate to have them killed anyhow, and particularly in the barbarous way in which these natives killed them. The broad stretch of water looks like a long lake. In all directions, sandbanks are showing their broad yellow backs, and there will be more showing soon, for it is not yet the height of the dry. We are perpetually grounding on these, which by next month will be above water. These canoes are built, I believe, more with a view to taking sandbanks comfortably than anything else. But they are by no means yet sufficiently specialized for getting off them. Their flat bottoms enable them to glide onto the banks and sit there without either upsetting or cutting into the sand as a canoe with a keel would. But the trouble comes in when you are getting off the steep edge of the bank, and the usual form it takes is upsetting. So far, my Ajamba friends have only tried to meet this difficulty by tying the cargo in. I try to get up the geography in this region conscientiously. Fortunately, I find Gray Shirt, Singlet, and Pagan can speak trade English, for my interpreter's knowledge of their language seems confined to "p'raps," "'tis better so," and "lordy, lordy, help me," a valueless vocabulary. None of them, however, seem to recognize a single blessed name on the chart, which is saying nothing against the chart and its makers, who probably got their names up from Mimbaguas and Ilgaguas instead of Ajamba, as I am trying to. Geographical research in this region is fraught with difficulty, I find, owing to different tribes calling one and the same place by different names. And I am sure the Royal Geographical Society ought to insert among their hints that every traveler in this region should carefully learn every single native word or set of words signifying "I don't know." 4 villages and 2 rivers I have come across out here solemnly set down with various forms of this statement for their native name. Really, I think the old Portuguese way of naming places after saints, etc., was wiser in the long run, and it was certainly pleasanter to the ears. My Njamba, however, know about my Ngabi and the Ventu all right, and Elvia Azingo, as I must try and get cross bearings from these. We have in addition to our crew this morning a man who wants to go and get work at John Holt's sub-factory away on the Rimbabwe. He has been waiting a long while at Arumva, unable to get across, I am told, because the road is now stopped between Azingo and Rimbabwe by those fearful fans. "How are we going to get through that way?" says I, with natural feminine alarm. "We are not, sir," says Gray Shirt. This is what Lady MacDonald would term a chatty little incident, and my hair begins to rise as I remember what I have always been told about those fans and the indications they have already seen of its being true when on the upper Agabwe. Now here we are to try to get through the heart of their country, far from a French station and without the French flag. Why did I not obey Mr. Hudson's orders not to go wandering about in a reckless way? Anyhow, I am in for it, and fortune favors the brave. The only question is, do I individually come under this class? I go into details. It seems Pagan thinks he can depend on a friendship of 2 fans he once met and did business with, and who now live on an island in Lake Nkovi. Nkovi is not down on my map, and I have never heard of it before. Anyhow, thither we are bound now. Each man has brought with him his best gun, loaded to the muzzle, and tied on to the baggage against which I am leaning, the muzzle sticking out on each side of my head. The flintlocks covered with cases or sheaths made of black skins of gorillas, leopard skin, and beautiful bright bay skin, which I do not know, which they say is bush cow, but they call half a dozen things bush cow. These guns are not the gas pipes I have seen up north, but decent rifles, which have had the rifling filed out and the locks replaced by flintlocks and converted into muzzle loaders, and many of them have beautiful barrels. I find the Ajamba named for the beautiful shrub that has long branches of red, yellow, and cream-colored young leaves at the end of its branches is obayai. I also learned in their native ebony and monkey. I have also learned that in their language, ebony and monkey are one and the same. The forest on either bank is very lovely. Some enormously high columns of green are formed by sort of climbing plant having taken possession of lightning-struck trees. And in one place, it really looks exactly as if one has spread a great green coverlet over the forest so as to keep it dry. No highland showing in any direction. Pagan tells me the extinguisher-shaped juju, filled with medicine and made of iron, is against drowning. The red juju is for keep foot in path. Beautiful effect of a gleam of sunshine lighting up a red sandbank till it glows like gold. Indeed, the effects of today, owing to the mist and the sun playing in and out among it. The sandbanks now have their cliffs to the north, northwest, and northwest. At 9:30, the broad river in front of us is apparently closed by sandbanks which run out from the banks thus: yellow south bank, bright red, yellow north bank. Current running strong along south bank. This bank bears testimony to this also being the case in the wet season, for a fringe of torn down trees hangs onto it into the river. Pass Seek, a town in North Bank, interchanging the usual observations regarding our destination. The river seems absolutely barred with sand again, but as we paddle down, the obstructions resolve themselves into spits of sand from the North Bank and the largest island in midstream, which also has a long trail or train of sandbank downriver. Here we meet a picturesque series of canoes, fruit and trade laden, being pulled upstream. One man with his pole over one side and the other with his pole over the other, making a St. Andrew's cross as we meet them head on. Most luxurious, charming, and pleasant trip is this. The men are standing up swinging in rhythmic motion, their long, rich, redwood paddles in perfect time to their elaborate melancholy minor key song, boat song. Nearly lost with all hands. Sandbank paviliver, only when we are going over the end of it, slipped sideways over its edge. River deep, bottom sand and mud. This information may be interesting to the geologist, but I hope I shall not be converted by circumstances into a human-sounding apparatus again today. Next time she strikes, I shall get out and shove behind. This is a good place for us to stop. Check out part 2.